Welcome again, MSU College of Natural Science team. My name is Jordan Zier. I'm excited to take you into your second day of training, which is really our first day of admin training. We have 2 days of admin training that we're going to go over. So today is the initial setup training where we go through the entire setup menu, which is a level 10 functionality. And we'll be talking about some of the differences between what an administrator is, whether that's a level 10 or level 9. And some of the key, functions and capabilities of those users. And so with that, I just want to remind you that we are a small group. So as questions come up, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask, or throw it in the chat if you don't think it's something that's necessarily part of the context of what we're going over and you want to address it at some point. And I'll go into our PowerPoint. We shouldn't need the full 3 hours, but we have the time if we need it. And we will take a break halfway through. All right, with that, let's go ahead and go over our agenda. So what is an administrator? We're going to talk about the different levels of users within Omni CMS and which of those levels are considered admin. We're going to talk about the entire setup menu. We're going to talk about assigning access and some key terms with that. We're going to get a little bit of a preview of what the access settings menu looks like as well. We're going to cover a concept around image sizes, which deals with creating image size sets that you can apply to your entire site or given sections, as well as go into the live demonstration in the platform itself. So with that, what is an administrator? So levels 9 and 10, we would call administrators within Omni CMS. Your level 9 is more of an assistant admin responsible for continuing site maintenance, whereas the level 10 has full admin capabilities responsible for the initial and ongoing site/account setup and determining what those level 9 tasks might be. You may find that your organization doesn't necessarily need assistant admins, but that's what we're going to determine or find out maybe today through our training. So level 10, not level 9, will have access to the setup menu. And so let's talk a little bit about all these different items. So they contain 2 areas. We're going to have the top section, which is our account level settings. So these settings will take effect across all of your sites, or at least use some of the items where you can implement them in your individual sites as you go through. And so here we also have site level settings. So you can specifically attach, social media accounts, create template groups, and sign into your YouTube account channel for specific sites as well. And so there's a little bit of a differentiation between those, and we'll talk about each of those as we go through. So key administrative functions are going to live all throughout this. So our general account and site settings, that's where we're going to spend the first half of our time today. And then also how to add users and groups. We've spent a little bit of time going into users to get you guys all set up. We're going to talk about creating new users and kind of the process of getting them all set up on your instance. We also have the ability to change some access to our mini apps within the system called gadgets. And then here within the sites, we can create template groups that you could assign to particular sections throughout your site. And we'll get to actually play around with that a little bit later today. And of course, linking our social media. So there are some key terms when we are referring to users within Omni CMS. The first are permissions. So this refers to what are they able to do within the system. So do they have permission to add new content? Do they have permission to create new sections, upload files, delete files? And this is a user level. This is set by user levels, but you can also create custom per user permissions for some capabilities. I'm going to go through a handy resource for you guys to show you how to determine what level of a user and what custom permissions you might want to give them. Next is access. So regardless of their permission, access determines where they can go and actually use what they have permission to do. So you can do this at the site level, sections, pages, individual areas, editable regions within pages. And so we're going to go through the access settings to determine where users can go. And in order to limit access, you actually use groups to do that, not individual users. You could create a group that has an individual user in it, but you have to use groups to limit access. And we're going to see that in action. All right, so let's talk a little bit of a high-level overview of what our different user levels can do. So as level 0 is just a reviewer, they do have the capability to publish pages. So this usually, we have a lot of schools use executive assistants as level 0s, who they'll review the content of their boss that they've been doing and then make that final publish on their behalf. But they cannot make edits to it. They can only review and then publish or submit those pages for publish. A level 1 through 3 can edit, but they can't create new content, meaning they cannot create new pages or sections or assets. A level 4 is where you can start to create new content. And the difference between a level 4 and a level 5 is they can both create new content, but the level 5 can edit page parameters, which we were looking at yesterday, like changing the hero image for a page, turning on navigation on the side or not. A level 6 and 7 are able to upload files. Level 8 has the ability to delete files. We also talked about how they can copy, rename, and move files. Level 9 has site-wide administrative control. And then that level 10 has account-wide administrative control. They can do any and all things within Omni CMS. So
Jordan, one of the questions that we have that I just thought this might be a good point to interject this.
Yeah.
And if it's something coming up later in your presentation, just leave it for that. But we're particularly interested to know if we can have some administrative rights for people that are only per site. So for instance, we'd like to have someone that could administer the access for their site, but not the rest of the sites. And those of us that are in the room now, we would have access to all the sites, of course, but we'd like to dole out some of those user management duties to people inside of the departments that have the sites in our instance.
That is a good question. And so a level 8 is the lowest level of being able to assign access in a way. Basically, they can only turn on whether or not someone has access to a given section or page. If you give them source code permissions, they would be able to then go into the source code of a page and limit access to given editable regions and stuff like that. I will actually demonstrate the access settings as a level 8 and show you how minimal it is. Because a level 9 is considered an admin, they would also be able to go through various sites. And so I'll look into see if there's actually any way that we can hone that in at all. Because that would be important for you guys. So I'll definitely, while we're going through it, see if I can kind of test the system a little bit. And if I can't do it in the time that we have, that's something I'll review and find for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so setting account access settings inside Omni CMS, we're going to be able to do it at the site level, section, pages, even assets we can assign access, and then binary content. So even files that are just on your computer, whether or not someone has access on your CMS. And so here is an example of what the access settings menu looks like. So here, let's say we had an athletics section. It's just off of the root here. If I wanted to limit who can actually access this section, I would go into our access group here and assign it to the athletics group. So a level 10 administrator would have to create this athletics group and put the various users into this group. And then you as a level 10 or a level 9 or 8 could assign this access group to this section. So if they are not part of this athletics group, they'll see this folder in the structure, but it will be black. It won't be like a blue clickable folder. So they won't be able to actually gain access to this section. One thing to note as well is if you're making changes to a well-established section on your site, you may want to make changes recursively, meaning that, let's say I just created this athletics section. If I were to apply this, it will apply to the folder and nothing else is in there right now. So anything new will inherit these access settings. Whereas if this athletics section has been around for a while and we realize that too many people have been going in and accessing it, I can apply recursively and limit access to all enclosed files and folders as well. I'm going to show the difference between when we have this turned on and when we have this on. This will change these to checkbox items where you can say, hey, are you sure you want to do this for all of those enclosed files and folders? So we'll get to see that in a little bit. But moving forward, let's say within the athletics section, we ended up creating a news section that was specific to athletics. We could even then limit access within that section to an additional group called athletics news. And so only members of this group, even if someone's in this athletics group, but they're not in this one, they'll be able to get into the athletics folder, but won't have access to this news section within athletics. And so this is a little bit of a demonstration of potential use cases where someone does have access at a higher level, but as you get more specific and further in, you may want to limit that even further. And so we'll get to play around with some different scenarios. And as you guys think of things, please ask them, and we can show the process of actually implementing that. So. Next, I want to talk about inheritance and precedence. These are some key terms when we think of access settings. And so access settings are inherited from higher level settings. So if we don't change anything that's closer to the content, whatever's set at a higher level will just be automatically inherited. So access as you get closer to the content, though, will take precedence over what was set at those higher levels. So let's kind of see that breakdown here. So sites is going to be the top level of access. Then you have sections. So sections will inherit whatever settings you've set here. Now, if you were to change your sections, those settings will be inherited by its pages. And then if you were to change specific pages access settings, those would be inherited by the editable regions on the page. And so that's our lowest level, is editable regions, where you could change access there, and that will take precedence because it's closer to the content. And so here we see just kind of that flow going. And then lastly, last slide of our PowerPoint today is just to introduce the concept of image sizes when we are going to talk about image size sets. And so you're going to have an option when you're creating image sizes that will be used in image size sets as to whether or not you have the image stay as an original aspect ratio or to crop it. And so original is just going to say, I'm going to keep the aspect ratio of the picture within the size parameters that I established. And so here, where we say 100 by 100, what it's doing is it's not appending, these white boxes to the picture. What it's doing is it's trying to fit the longest side into that and shrinking the shorter side as much as it needs to in order for that ratio to be preserved. So this will be 100 width, but probably like 66 in its height. And so that's what original is. Whereas on the reverse, if we were to choose cropped, it's going to bring down the shorter sides. So once it hits the shorter size to 100, then it will just cut off the edges of the longer side. And we'll get to see that as an example, but we just wanted to introduce the concept between the original versus cropped before we get into it, because it can be a little bit harder to explain without the visual. All right, and so with that, let's just go ahead and jump into our system. So I'm going to slide over here, and hopefully we can see that I'm on the dashboard and I'm logged in as my level 10 trainer. And yep, okay, perfect. So here we're going to move right into our setup menu, and we're going to start with our account settings. So notice here when I click on setup and go to account, I also see the setup menu here. So just as it was displayed here, I can see those main categories. And then once I'm in one of those options, if it has additional items, it will kind of have a sub drop down right here for us. So you can navigate this way instead of going back to the setup menu each time. And these will just kind of follow as we scroll through. Notice here, if you need to navigate to auxiliary sites, you just click there and it brings you to it. If I need to go back to general settings, it'll bring me back. So that's one way to quickly navigate through if you know exactly where you're going. Now with the account settings and the site settings, I'll be going through a lot of these items, but I may not go over every single one because some are either self-explanatory or don't really need to be messed with that much. I will be sending resources and documents that happen to go through each item in detail with at least 2 sentences on each item. So a lot of thorough documentation for all these settings. And so here with our account settings, so this is our account name. So this is the account name for all of the sites that you're going to create here. Jesse is the main contact currently set here for this. And so his email address is set as the main contact for the account. And so that means that Jesse is going to receive any system communication that may come through. And the primary example that comes to mind for those system emails are when someone gets locked out of their account. They're trying to log in and they're misusing the password, and they've superseded the number of login attempts. Then you'll get a notification, Jesse, that someone got locked out. I'll show you how to unlock their account for you in the future. And then this should be just some, the main address for your school. Moving on down, we already do have your account options in terms of your time zone and what language you guys are using. This right here, the help URL, is referring to where this support link goes to. So I showed you guys yesterday that by default, when you click on here, it's going to take you to the support.moderncampus.com site, which is a handy tool for your CMS users, especially as they're learning the system. But let's say down the road, you guys decide that you want to, either develop your own kind of support site or support document that you would want to use. You can go ahead and put something in here like that. And yeah, I agree with Steve for the main contact here being a distribution email. And so if you guys decided that you created a support site that may even provide links to the support.moderncampus.com and those documents, you can fill that in with whatever you want to. If you leave it blank, it will just always stay as support.moderncampus.com. I'll show you another location where you can actually add additional support resources that you guys might create that may not overtake this, but be easy for your users to access. Just Edit is referring to our editors. So whenever someone is editing a page, they'll be using Just Edit. So our WYSIWYG editor is labeled Just Edit. And so you probably don't want to disable or change the fact that everyone who has the capability to edit is going to use that editor. And then always use HTTPS. Your live site is going to be HTTPS. This is referring to Omni CMS. So while your users are in Omni CMS on the staging server, it's currently disabled, meaning not every single page is going to be secure. Right now, we're working with a secure page because it is your account settings, your setup menu. And so it is adding that extra layer of encryption here. But if I were to go to my pages view, for instance, right here, notice that this is not using HTTPS. It's not as necessary for that. But if that is something that you guys would like to enable, you can just click on here to turn on and provide the different information that is needed. But I do recommend contacting support because there are a couple of things that they need to do on their end to make that change for you. So depending on what you guys have in terms of kind of your security protocols, maybe you do need all of the pages to be HTTPS, then you can go ahead and do that. Just contact support and they'll walk you through the process of switching that over. But again, this is just referring to Omni CMS, the platform. That being that you need credentials to get onto the site, it may not necessarily be something you need, but it is there for you if you want to. Next, with our login settings, we have the ability to set a kind of number of failed attempt logins. 3 is pretty nice. And so once they pass 3 attempts, then they will be locked out and you will get that system email coming through. You can change that to whatever you'd like as well. Next, page checks. This is referring to, again, where we were yesterday and we were publishing a page. When we click on here, or with the page checked out, we go to our page check right here. The page checks that are available are set right here at the accounts level. So this right here is just turning on which checks are available. Later in the site settings, we'll see how we can force any of those checks and set some conditions based on whether or not they can publish if those pass. But these right here are what's going to be present for the users to be able to actually check themselves. So if I wanted to run the spell check because it's turned on, I can. And so here you can determine whether or not you want the W3C validation or not, and turning those on or off as needed. Accessibility check, when that is turned on, you're going to see the ability to change your accessibility guideline standards. Where are they coming from? Right now it's set as the default industry standard, AA. AAA is going to increase the number of guidelines that it's checking along, but could lead to maybe some hurdles for your design. And so 2.0 is industry standard. They do have the newer updated version 2, depending on what your local ordinance require for accessibility standards. When you do have that set, you have the ability also to, when someone runs the accessibility check, whether or not likely problems or potential problems show up. So to give you an example of that, if I were to run this accessibility check right now for this page, I'm getting problems, so 14 known and 88 potential. So there's none likely, so at least I'm black and white between these ones. And so if I were to click through here, I could see, determine what are the known, what are the potential. And so if I were to change that so only my known problems show up, I could turn these 2 off, and it will only be known problems that show up when that check is run. And so I'll leave those just as they are right now, and you guys can determine whether or not that's something that you would like. Also, your exceptions. So for accessibility and links, you have the ability to set exceptions for those. When you go into accessibility here, it's going to show the number of guidelines that are there, and you can look through them and say, oh, we keep having this issue pop up, but that's something that we're okay with. Let's make it an exception. If you were to make it an exception, it would show up in active exceptions. You do need to give a reason for the exception that you're making when you save it. And then you can remove it if it ends up being a problem for you guys down the road. Publish threshold, this is just referring to how many pages a user can have scheduled for publish. 0 means that there's no cap, but as soon as you change that from 0 to 1 or any number higher, that would start to put on the restriction for your users of how many pages they can have scheduled to publish at once. And so that is something that 0 is fine. I think this is probably just a rare use case for another school where they're like, hey, can we limit how many pages someone can schedule to publish? But this right here is set to 0, but you have the capability to change that if needed. Default tweet and wall post. So you can do this at the account level or at these, you'll also be able to do it at the site level as well. If you were to do that here, like let's say, for instance, we said, hey, MSU, NatSci fam, check out what's new. And this would be a default of what pops up if you were to, link your social media accounts. And so here, I'm just going to show you an example. When we have the publish window open, right now we've only seen 2 tabs. But when you do have your social media accounts linked to your account or to your site, you're going to have a 3rd tab here that says social media. And so I have an example of a school that had that set up. So here's that third tab. And so you can have Twitter, Facebook, one or the other or both. And then here's that default that they had established for their account or for their site. So this was their default tweet or wall post. And you can, an editor who's publishing a page and has the ability to choose one of the social media accounts or both of them, they can edit this if they want to. This just automatically populates. They could remove it or add to it, and then choose to add the URL to the post that is made for that. And so that's something that we haven't seen yet because we haven't, linked any of your social media accounts to your page. And so one thing I just keep seeing, my Zoom, you guys keep disappearing, but I think you're still there. I just don't see your cameras anymore. Oh, but that's because we're all hiding our cameras. That's fine. No worries. I just want to make sure that you guys weren't gone. And so I'll remove this, but just wanted to show you guys that you have the capability of doing this at the account level. Then this will push down to all of your sites. And then you can do it at the individual site level, which will take precedence because it's closer to the content. So I'll go ahead and delete that. Next here, you guys aren't using single sign-on currently, but if you had like a central sign-on for them, this is where you would set that up. If you do this, you will also need to have a logout URL established for that. But for right now, it's not something we really need to worry about. When this announcement URL, so when you click on the direct edit link and it takes you to the page to log in, there was a little announcement on the side, and let me do that really quickly. I want to show it. I'm going to open another page here so I can do this. Sorry, I know you guys aren't seeing this right now. So that announcement URL, I'm going to try and show here. All right, so hopefully you guys are seeing this, this announcement URL that's right here. So if you don't put anything in your announcement URL area in your account settings, then Modern Campus will take the opportunity to provide a resource or let you know, things that are going on our side for your users to take advantage of, whether that's the monthly orientation, a developer workshop, and so on. Training Tuesdays, those will populate automatically from us, but you have the capability to put in your own announcement URL for your users as they go to log into their account. And so, yeah, that's one thing I just wanted to show. And then you also have the ability, whether or not you're using single sign-on, is to provide a logout URL. So when they log out, you can have it go to the homepage of your website, or if there's some other internal site that you have your employees use, you can go ahead and redirect them when they log out as needed.
This is on a this is on a site-by-site basis, correct? So if we're doing single sign-on for all of our sites, we'd have to configure this on each site when we set it up.
No, this is the account.
This is the account. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this will take effect for all of your sites. So whether they're a user that's only using one site when they log in, if you set up single sign-on, that would just, they would use their credentials that they use, and they would give them access to the site that they're trying to log into.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. And so we talked a little bit with Steve yesterday about potentially adding some webhooks to get some notifications if something were deleted or anything published here. This is where you would go ahead and put in the URL to the webhook site that you're using for that. I will show you in the access settings throughout your site how to enable webhooks to trigger once this is populated. And so that is where you would use that. Again, that's basically all handled by the external webhook URL. So this is where you'd put it, but I'll show you how to change access settings for given sections to say, hey, trigger webhooks for this section. Auxiliary sites. So let's say you guys had some sort of site that's hosting, thousands of images that you guys are using, you can go ahead and if it has the FTP server information that you can assign here, you can go ahead and set that up. And so this would create a read-only connection to that server. And so, for instance, here, like let's say I'm editing this page, and I'm going to insert an image. So I'll just go and insert an image here and go to my source. Instead of choosing from staging or production, if I have an auxiliary site set up, I would be able to click on there and look through the content that's on there and insert it from there. Do note though that you'll only be able to look and see what those are. You won't be able to manage that from Omni CMS. Again, read only for auxiliary sites. So that's where you would access it from, like inserting images and such. And then lastly, or not lastly on this, we have two more areas. Add-ons right here. This is referring to this drop down right here. So right now this has our marketplace and your calendar module that you've added to your account. But you have the ability as an administrator to add additional links to here, whether that's to a support page that you have on your site, but it's not linked to anything. This again is only accessible to Omni CMS users, this add-ons dropdown. So you could provide a link to any sort of resource. Maybe you use other platforms that you'd like them to be able to get to a little bit easier when they're on this platform. And so let's say, for instance, a very handy tool, Google. So let's do the full URL. And then you can set this as admin access only or open a new window without that checked. We'll go ahead and do that and save. So you can add multiple add-ons and then you can organize them if you were to have them. And now you'll see that this add-on is appearing here. And so I can quickly get to google.com without having to go into my browser window here. I'm going to get rid of that because that's probably not needed for your school. But that's how you would add additional resources within the platform, just right here in the add-ons.
So that's something we could do for like our own training resources if we didn't want to swap out that URL for the Modern Campus support.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when instead of changing this, you just add some support right here.
Okay.
And we do see schools utilize either option or sometimes both. So they might, change this support link and then add Modern Campus support to the add-ons. So it just depends on your preference.
So the idea with add-ons, they're really just a link to another resource. It's not really something that interacts with the CMS in any way, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you're linking to a page that was built in the CMS, but that would be the only connection. So, but you would use a full URL, not like a dependency tag there.
Mm-hmm.
And then optional features for your account. So this is account-wide settings in terms of using the various managers or management systems that we use. LDP refers to our advanced asset types, forms, and image galleries that use the live delivery platform. Melody right here is under our content menu. This is newer. This is kind of it used to be called Layout Builder, and then they gave it a name. And so this would be for less technical users to maybe be able to build, template, I'm air quoting, template-like pages. But that is something we're going to go over tomorrow a little bit briefly. And then your multi-browser preview. We didn't really talk about this yesterday, but here you have the configure option for this. And so this basically is configuring what versions of OSs and the different versions of browsers are you going to allow your CMS users to request a preview. And so let me show you the context of what I'm talking about. So here in the preview tab, not in the edit tab, and we'll just go ahead and move over here. We didn't see this yesterday, but right here you have the multi-browser preview option. When you click on this, you can select certain items. So notice this is choosing the latest version of Chrome on Windows 11, the latest version of Chrome within OS X Big Sur, and a couple of mobile devices as well. And so here, if I were to go ahead and click on preview, it's now going to take some time and start loading basically just image files of how this page would look on these different platforms or browsers, devices, and so on. So I'll let that load in the background right now. But this configure setting is just turning on what options were available for them to select from that multi-browser preview. So if you did want, for some reason, you're committed to Windows 8 and you wanted to make sure that your users were able to look for previews for Firefox 35 on Windows 8, you can click on here and add that to the list of options. So not often will you probably go in here and make these changes, but it is available for you. And we have by default selected all of the options for the latest operating systems. And so let's see if that's finished. Still working. So we might, go back and see. Yeah.
Jordan, if you don't change the defaults in that, does it automatically update as OSs get newer?
Are released? That's a good question. I would assume that that's something that's done when we come out with a new release and push that to your platform. That any of those little pieces would change, but that's something I'll write down on my follow-up items of just getting a full answer on that. Okay, cool. And then let's see if that gave it enough time still. Okay, so we've gotten a couple of previews here. So how does this look on a Android Galaxy tablet? All right, and so as you can see, it's just kind of a little screenshot of the page and how it would look on their tablet. Notice here there's some gray squares that are popping up, and so this happens to have something to do with accessibility. And so I don't exactly know what's going on here. So it may be saying that there's some accessibility issues with the way that we have this page set up when it comes to mobile. Notice we're not seeing those items pop up on the desktop versions of the page. And so this would be handy for your editors to know, hey, how does this page actually play out on a mobile device? So let me go ahead and see this as well. So we're not getting those gray bars that we were getting on the Samsung tablet for an iPhone, but it is still showing. What is this? Is this just clicking me through the options? Okay, I think that's what it was doing. It was when I clicked on it, it was just trying to go back to the Firefox one, which is why it was still loading. But this little accessibility piece might also just be something that's now that appears as they scroll through the page. I think that's more of what it is. So I apologize for misspeaking when I said this is an accessibility issue. I believe these the mobile devices now populate a little, hey, here, you need help, if we can help you, with your browsing experience.
Were you speaking specifically to the little blue icon there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on every page that we've got inside of what's being built for us, we have an accessibility toolbar. So on mobile devices, you'll see that if you touch that, that will actually activate the toolbar for you.
Okay, got it. Yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, why have I not seen that before? And so you guys are a first build that I've seen that, and that's very handy and a good consideration. So cool. And so and then lastly, this reveals site password. This doesn't actually reveal the site password, but it gives you the option in site settings, which we'll get to in a little bit, of being able to review the password for that site. So again, only a level 10 would even be able to go into that to see it. And so having this option turned on is what is there by default. And I'll show you guys where that is once we get into that setting. And so that is just a nice overview of the account settings. Now we're going to move over to our sites. And before we get into the actual site settings for each of your sites, I'll go over just one example for College of Natural Science. The settings will be the same for your department sites as well. But I want to go through some of the more actions that we have on this page that will be useful for you guys, especially as you work to create all of your other sites as well. So here we have our more actions button. And so as we go through here, this edit tab is where I can get to the site settings itself. The same thing as clicking on the blue link here. If you were to click on this blue link, it's just going to take you to the live homepage, if there is one, for this site. Site access. So this is our first level of access settings that we can set for this site specifically. So here, as I click on this, I'm now seeing the site settings, the access settings at the site level. So whatever settings I make here is going to be what applies down. So this is important because you guys are going to have multiple sites, and I'm sure quite a few editors or employees that will not necessarily have access to every single site. And so you would create groups per site and then establish the access to that site once you've determined who should be in the group for any given site. And so one thing, we haven't made groups yet, and so we're going to go through actually making that. But let's say as we continue through the UAT phase and we build out a lot more of the College of Natural Science site, if we wanted to change access and make sure that it goes all the way down, we would recursively modify this and say, hey, in case any files are in there that don't already have this inherited, let's go ahead and make sure that everyone's going to whatever group, let's say it's nat sci group, and so you go ahead and pick that, and then that would make sure that it carries over to all of the files and folders that are on the site. And so that's the difference between recursive and not. Here, I'm not going to make any changes here. I just want to kind of go through here. You can also establish an approver specifically for your site over everything. So all publishes have to go through them. We're going to talk about workflows tomorrow. This would be a pretty big and daunting responsibility with way too much notifications and way too much work for the person unless they were 40 hours just approving stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that at the site level, but to each their own. So you can also assign specific template groups per site. So let's say, as all of your templates are, finished out being built, you can assign different template groups at the site level as well. Quite a few different tools that we're going to talk about through here, as well as some directory variables. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday in terms of your default hero image and your default nav file, but you can also set other directory variables like a specific image folder, that whenever someone goes to insert an image and they look at the source, it'll always go to that default image folder. And so you just establish that here. And that would be for the entire site itself. And so you'll also notice you could trigger webhooks for your entire site once you have that established. But you can do this also down at the page level. I just want to point out that here for the site access, again, this is just a reminder, only level 10 can get into site access, because a level 9 does have the ability to assign access at section levels. So for instance, we're in this training section here, and my access settings are accessible for a section via the key right next to it. And so notice we're seeing a very similar access settings window, but again, it's just referring to the training folder. And so here I can do this recursively or anything like that, change all of these. I can also trigger webhooks specifically for this section. But as a level 9, when they go to the root of the site, there is no access settings here. So they can't change the root level or site level access settings that's only available from the sites in the setup dropdown. I will show while we're talking about, different access menus. So here we have this for the section, but let's say we wanted to do it for this subsection here. I can go and click on more actions and go to access. Of course, if I were to have clicked on the folder, I would have the ability to do that here. But now let's say we were doing it to an individual page. So this home page for our training section, if I wanted to, I can click on this more actions, go to edit and access, and open the access settings menu for that given page as well. There's another way to do that once you're on the page, which is through properties. Properties, you can get to the access settings as well from here. So multiple ways to do that. And then that last level for a level 9 and up, who have source by default. If you were looking at your editable regions, so let's go ahead and do. So for instance here, my main content, my editable region, this group is what's assigning access to that editable region. I would change this to whichever group I've established that I would want to have access to it. So that is another way that you can create access or limit access for an editable region as well. This page just has one editable region, so this would basically take away their capability to do anything on this page. So that's just going through access settings and where you can find them. I just wanted to go through that with you guys.
I had a couple of questions from that, if I can. So level 10 is the only level that can create groups, correct?
Correct.
So if I were to, let's take integrative biology as an example. So I created just a general group for integrative biology and assigned that group to this site for permissions, meaning anyone who's in that group can only log in, edit the integrative biology site. Can we click into that really quick? Just as a quick example. So you said from
the access settings, you mean, right?
Yes, sorry. So you said, or no, sorry, the content. Can we look at the content?
Oh, yeah. So let me go here to this.
Yeah, sorry. So you're saying if I assign that group, the integrative biology group, to this site to be able to edit this site, from here, a level 9, for example, couldn't set a permission from the root, but they'd have to be able to do it from the a section, correct?
Yeah, so they could then say, a level 9 can say, hey, I don't want anyone going into resources, messing with anything. Although if you have images and stuff in there, you may want to not do it at the in terms of like not being able to even click in here to find the images. But if you don't want them messing with the CSS, you can go ahead and, as a level 9, go in and limit the access to the CSS folder to just admins only or something.
Okay. So as the level 9, you can still assign groups. You're just not able to create the groups and put people in those groups. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so tomorrow I'm going to talk about a resource for a level 9 administrator in terms of understanding who is in a group. But yeah, they still don't have the capability to create groups.
Okay.
Yeah, that falls on you guys as the level 10. And so here, going back to sites, so yeah, so site access. Also at the site level, we can assign asset access, which is that mouthful right there. So here, this would apply to new assets only in terms of who has access to it. Access meaning edit, available meaning using, and then whether or not they need to be approved in terms of creating assets or making edits to those. Now, you can also recursively modify that for these items up here. So if you want to have this apply to all existing assets as well, if you've created quite a few. But you also have down here the ability to limit access in terms of creating assets. So whether or not they're level 4 or higher, which means they can create assets, you can go ahead and limit that down. Let's say we don't want everyone to be able to make these more advanced asset types. We can limit that to administrators or any established groups that we've created. And so you can go ahead and limit those down per type of asset. And so that is where we would go and do that site wide. Of course, you can do this individually to the different assets as well. So if I were to open assets in a new tab, we probably only have the couple that we made yesterday. So here, as I click on more actions and edit, I can change the access specifically for this one. So I don't have to do it to all of them, but I have the capability to do that from our site menu. And then also tags. So you'll see that we have the ability to manage tags over here. But in terms of limiting the access to creating tags or using tags, you have the capability to do that here as well. So fixed tags is going to apply these tags to every file on the site. So this would really be more for organizational purposes. Tags are mostly used when we're talking about your blogs and your events. But this, if for some reason for organizational purposes, you decide that you want to assign a natural science tag to every single page, you can go ahead, or every single file, you can do that and apply it recursively for the site. And once you save it, we'll go ahead and apply it to existing and any new ones that you create. Now, this is more commonly used. It's still not used all that often, but here, this would be for you guys to control site-wide, or at the individual site level, what tags are available. So, or which ones are definitely not available. So you can determine whether or not this list is allowed or not allowed. And so here we've had schools that, had a list of 30 tags that they've approved to be used for their, blog articles or events. And so whatever was in this list, that's all that the editors could use. If this is left blank, whenever I go into creating an asset, for instance, this one yesterday, if I go in and I start to edit this and I go to the properties, I can add a tag and I can type in whatever I want to. So I can type in cheese and that's now a tag because there is no, filtered tags here. But if you are going to use this, you want to make sure you have every tag accounted for, basically. And so if you're not worried about your editors making a tag called cheese, then you should be fine. But this would give you site-wide control in terms of what tags can be used, which will make a lot more sense when we get into your blogs template, as well as your calendar events. But this would be where you would go for each site. So if it's integrative technology, I have tag access specifically, or biology, specifically for this site, I have tag access settings, as well as, for the natural science here. Moving down to the publish setting. So here, whenever you create a new site, like let's say we were to, start making our other department sites and we cloned this one. Let's say we cloned integrative biology kind of as our shell site and our template for making department sites. Once we've created it, we need to publish the site and it'll publish all of the files basically that it's going to use. And this also would be, let's say everyone's been working so hard and no one's actually published any of the pages that they've made. You can go ahead and publish every single page at once from this option. Here is also where you would publish your sitemap. And so this isn't done automatically, so you would need to come in here and do that. And so here, this is saying, hey, this is going to generate one and save it as sitemap.xml on production. So here, let's go ahead. And so if it already exists, it will be overwritten. So we'll go ahead and click on OK. That's going to just take a second, and we're going to view that here. And there's just your basic sitemap here. Again, once you create more pages and you need to update that, you just go here to the publish and do a new one. And like it said, it will overwrite the old one. Scan is something I'm going to come back to. This is referring to our dependency tags. And this is going to be useful when we're doing certain things like maybe we want to export our site as a zip file, like a backup that you would store, wherever you want to. When you do this, what you want to do first is you actually want to do a dependency scan. The reason why is because what a dependency scan is going to do is going to look through your entire site that we're referring to here, and it's going to find the dependency tags and it's going to revert them to full URLs. And then the reason why you would do that when you're going to export it, because you may not necessarily be importing what you exported into Omni CMS. And so it wouldn't make sense, like whatever platform you end up putting it back onto, it wouldn't understand what those dependency tags are. Once you've finished doing that process, then you would go ahead and revert, do a dependency revert, which would then take all those full URLs and change it back to those dependency tags that they already had. When you go through your go live process with our support team, they will actually have you do that as well as your go live process. There is a full document that walks you through each step that you're going to take. So that's a little bit with the scan under the dependency revert and dependency scan. And then under the site here, this is where we could clone a site. So if we were making another college site, we could clone this one. Again, you can choose whether or not you want to just bring over the settings or all of the files as well. There's a nice article on doing that. You can save a version of your site as it is, which will save a version of every single page and asset, reusable content. It will save a version of everything with the same version description that you establish here. Initializing is done already. When you create your direct edit link is when the website is initialized. And so this would be something that you'd walk through when you do clone a site as well. So there's documentation I'll send you guys that has the instructions for that as well. We talked about exporting zip, and let's say for some reason, we clone a site and the board decides, we're not actually going to have that department anymore. You can go ahead and delete it completely if you need to. And then moving your calendar. So if you had, a calendar associated to this given site and you needed to move it to another site, you can do that, or delete a calendar altogether. And so that's appearing only because you guys have the calendar module as an add-on. All right, and so now that we've gone through everything except for the actual site settings, let's go in and see what all those items are. So some of these items we won't really be editing once we've created the site. For instance, our site information. Once you create the site name, that's locked in. When you do that process, it is going to create the universally unique ID and your public key for the HTTPS. And here is where you would be able to, for your site, build your global search index. So that's referring to this global search tool right here. So if you were to add new pages and for some reason it's not showing up and you needed that to show up immediately as opposed to the next day since it indexes overnight, you could go ahead and build an index. Also, you can exclude items from the global search. And so if you wanted that to take effect quicker, this is where you would come to build that index, where it would then exclude it from any future global searches. So let's say, for instance, the informational.pcf, I did not want this to show up in search. I'm going to go to the access settings for this and say exclude from search and say yes. So that's saved, but if I were to do a global search right now, it would appear. And so if I didn't want it to, I would build the index and then it would disappear from any search results right here. It'd still be in the location it is, and I'd still be able to access it if I knew how to get to here. But that's just one way for it to be hidden if you wanted to. And so moving on down, we have our FTP server information. So this you really probably won't change much, but this is that site password that I was showing you. So here where you can say show password, I'm not going to do that because this is being recorded. But here that's showing up because in our account settings, if you remember, we had that option to reveal site password. So because this is turned on, we have the capability to show password when we're in these settings down here, right here. And so as you create new sites or clone sites, then you'll need to make sure that you're giving the information here for the FTP route, the HTTP route. Most of this stuff is going to be populated kind of automatically as default, but you can go in and change any of these items. And then in terms of who can publish to this site, so who's actually going to be able to publish to the production server for this site, you can go ahead and limit that as well. And so if they have site access to this, you have it set to everyone. So those are the people who will be able to.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, quick question for you. So if we happen to clone a site, right? So we'll more than likely set up like a template site, and then we'll clone that site to migrate content into. So in the case of like the FTP, all that information, that stuff will come over in the clone?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is just what you need to have unique. It can't be the same.
So when you clone a site, right, what information I guess will be in the FTP route and the HTTP route once that's cloned?
So it will have what was in those fields from the clone.
Okay. So
And
those will have to be
if you
modified.
if you just try and save it, it's going to say, hey, those already exist.
Okay.
So yeah, you just have to slightly change those.
Okay.
And just so you can see kind of almost side by side a little bit, let's go ahead and do that site setting for integrative biology. So notice here we have similar information. It's just here is where those items change. And so the previous one didn't have this integrative biology in the HTTP route, and the FTP route was different. So
yeah, my only concern was like if I clone a site, oh, I forgot to change this. Now I'm publishing over another site.
no, it'll let you know. It'll say, hey, no, I already exist. So
okay, perfect.
All right, and then the direct edit button. So this is something that has been established to be the copyright symbol in the footer of your site. If you would need to change this, again, you would probably want to contact support, and they'll walk you through establishing a different direct edit link. And so that is something that I believe you guys probably discussed in the planning process already. So site preferences, a lot of this is inherited from your account settings. So notice there's no time zone or locale because those are already brought in from the account. And then in terms of local asset restrictions, so you can go ahead and so the group specified here will only be able to use local assets. They won't be able to use the ones that are available, across your sites. And so there's, again, no groups established yet, but you would be able to go ahead and say, hey, only the NatSci group, in here can only use local assets, not the ones that are made across your account. And so if we didn't touch too much on assets, but again, remember when we were creating them, I left the cheese tag on there. When we were creating them, we had the capability to, let's see, properties, I think, is lock it to a site, or if I leave it unchecked, it's available now on every single site. And so that determines whether it's a local asset or more of a global asset. So just wanted to, retouch on that since we were talking about it here. And so publish settings, this brings us back to what we were talking about in the account settings in terms of offering those page checks. So again, when I'm in here, the page checks, when I click on publish or the page check option, these are available to me. But in the site settings, this is where I can force page checks. So turning this on, I can then select any number of these to run automatically when someone clicks on publish. So if I were to click on these two and save it, when someone goes to publish, this will be grayed out until these have finished running. And so links checks takes a little bit longer than a spell check. Obviously, we saw spell check yesterday, but a spell check goes very, very quick. A link check can take, up to a minute, I've seen, depending on the page and how many links are there for it. So notice here, if we were to force this, I would have to wait till that's done to actually publish. And notice here, it's actually doing that because I elected to run this. But in your site settings, you can go ahead and force it to run automatically. Now, I'm not going to leave these checked. I just wanted to show the next layer to that. So forcing the checks still allows the user to publish regardless of the result that comes from it. So still running. So again, this might be one of those minute long tests. So it does let me know, hey, still checking. So, but now, so let's say in addition to these running automatically, I'm also going to make it so that they can only publish if spelling passes. I'm okay if link doesn't pass, but if spelling doesn't pass, they need to go and make sure that that's checked. We don't want to come off as incompetent to anyone who's coming through, and we misspelled our own school name. So here we can make sure we force that. And so notice here I only have the option to choose these two because those are currently the only items that are set as final check forced. As soon as I click on there, then I get the other option. Here again, now I have all 4 options. But as I go ahead and I limit these, now I can't turn on any of them because none of them are turning on automatically. I'll go ahead and turn that off right now, but just so you know, that's where you would do it. It's kind of hidden until you click on here and then continue through.
Really quick question on that. So,
yeah.
Excuse me, if that's enabled so that only when conditions are met, no one can override that. Is that true?
I believe an admin will still be able to override.
So a level 10 then.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this right here is just for your non-admin users. So at level 9 even would be able to override that.
Okay.
All right. And so yeah, we don't want to do that without your guys' deciding on that. So, and then here is where that default tweet and wall post is available at the site level. So if you don't necessarily have want the account default tweet and wall post for this site, you can go ahead and establish a specific one for here. Remove CMS tags is just when you're publishing, it's going to remove some of the CMS source tags within the source code. And so that's something when you do publish, it's just going to remove some Omni specific source code tags specifically. With the WYSIWYG editor, so here you could turn on or off whether or not you're not using HTML5 for some reason, but this is usually kept on. URL type is set as for default root relative. So this is referring to when I'll go ahead and cancel that. It looks like we didn't have too many links on here, but I guess it's getting hung up. So here, when I do link to a page or put in an image, the root relative is referring to this right here. So whatever your URL in the WYSIWYG editor settings is set to, so we have it as root relative. We could do absolute, where it would be the full URL then, or page relative, where it's going to start the slash at the page that you're on. You can go ahead, or the page that it's on, and then you can go ahead and establish whichever one you like. Root relative is default because, as you can see, it's not too long, it's not too crowded, but it also gives me a great idea of where this file is located. So that's what the URL type is. Feel free to change that as you want. Decorative images, so I'll leave that that image window open. By default is disabled. You could establish it as being a feature that only admins can use or all users. And what that would do is, instead of just going directly to alternative description, there'd be a checkbox that appears here saying that this image is decorative, which would then override the fact that I need an alternative description for accessibility purposes. And so we have it as disabled because by default, because some schools had said that their editors were just skipping the accessibility guideline by clicking on that as decorative and sort of just skipping the fact that they were trying to keep the site as accessible as possible. And so that's why it's disabled by default. If you wanted to, you can make it admins, give them the capability to make the decision, or all users, but that's why that's there for you. Disable image resizing. So this will come into play when we talk about creating image size sets, but you have the capability to make it so that someone cannot resize an image when they put it onto the page. So Here, for instance, I'm just going to put test and then go ahead and put it in here. Notice here now I have the capability to resize, whether that's here or in here. I have the capability to resize it. If this were turned on and then saved, I would not be able to do that. Same thing here with the being able to align an image. So again, in the advanced tab, when we're inserting or editing an image, this alignment tool, you can go ahead and disable that too if you wanted to. And so I'm going to leave those as they were by default. At the site level, again, we haven't created a custom toolbar, but I'll show you how to do that after our break today. But here you could, at the site level, be able to establish a default toolbar, which maybe for one site, you're going to remove the capability to add unordered lists. You can remove that tool and make that the default for this entire site. File naming. Oh, there's a question.
Yeah, sorry, I got one question about the WYSIWYG editor. Can you still use, so the reason I'm asking this question is in addition to the kind of the custom components, snippets that you guys are creating for us, I'm also working on creating some custom web components. So those are mostly JavaScript based, but they also use some custom HTML elements. I tried copying and pasting that inside the WYSIWYG editor on a page, inside the WYSIWYG editor on the page. And it looks like when I go to save that, so I went into the code view, pasted that in there just from the WYSIWYG editor, not actual source view.
Yeah.
And then when I close the code view to go back to just the normal WYSIWYG editor, like, you know, you're just typing it in there, it looks like it strips that out. So I'm wondering if you uncheck that, do you think that would not strip those components out?
So
those elements out?
So like here you went into this part and then you
correct. Yep. So I would put in my, excuse me, I put in my custom markup inside here. I would click on save and it would strip it out. If I click on the source at the top there, as opposed to going into this code view, I can copy and paste it in there and it will work fine until I go back in and do edit with the WYSIWYG editor, then it will strip it back out again.
Oh, really? I don't see why. I don't think anything that we're doing here would stop you from being able to do that. But that is definitely something that I would want to talk to Carl about.
Okay. I mean, I can give you like an example link of what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Yep. Let me get you that link here.
And what I might even do is like, I might ping Carl myself, but I might even make a UAT ticket, Jesse.
Okay.
And I'll CC you on that. So that way you can, you know, if I'm not quite getting the context, you can provide even more.
Okay.
I'm just writing that down, just a little bit of information.
Yep. The page, let's see, where's the chat here? The page that I'll put that code on is going to be this page here. So what I will do is I'll put the code in there through that that source button. I think is what the button was, or the tab was, so that you can actually see it working. And then, yeah, if he wants to go in there and I guess view that code from there and then try to use the WYSIWYG editor, like he'll see it just kind of disappear. So
yeah. Okay, perfect. Cool. Thank you for that. That's something that I would definitely, you should be able to do it. I actually have had customers use JavaScript using this little within the WYSIWYG editor, using that little source tool, and it works totally fine. So there's got to be something maybe in the XSL or something like that that he needs to look at.
Okay.
So we'll try and get to the bottom of it.
Okay, because yeah, the custom components that I've written, they use their own HTML, like their custom HTML elements.
Mhm.
So it looks like anything that is standard, so like a div, for example, the WYSIWYG editor doesn't strip it out, but any of my custom components or custom elements that I'm putting in there, it looks like it's just stripping out entirely.
Got it. So yeah, maybe we need to teach it to recognize those.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's good to know, and I'll make sure that Carl at least starts to look at it. He'll know a lot more than I do. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah. And then here, so with file naming, we've got two file naming areas here. So you can set a default extension for when you're creating files or naming them. And then you can also establish a regex, regular expression. And so if that's something that's less familiar to you or anyone watching the recording, here I'm just going to put in an example that I have. And so this right here is just basically setting parameters for file naming that need to be followed by the system. So once I have that established in here, if this is something I wanted to save, I could test that out to make sure that it works for, different use cases. I can also provide a description if I wanted to. I will note that Omni CMS already does have some file naming, parameters that are built in. But here, this is if you wanted to get a little bit more specific. And so you're going to include a description that pops up, to make sure someone is following the guidelines that you have set here. And so here I can go ahead and put in test.pdf. And so that checks out. But if I do PDF, I've passed the maximum of 5 letters in my extension here. And so that's why I got the issue. Here I can go ahead and still put in numbers and .doc, and that works. But if I were to put in a special character, like a pound sign, that doesn't, because the regex is stopping that from happening. So you can go ahead and establish, regex if you wanted to for your file naming conventions. But also note here that we do have it turned on for you guys, that we're allowing you to have uppercase in folder names. So being that this is checked right now, I don't believe I checked that while I was scrolling through here. So that is something that's been done for you already. I'll also go ahead and get rid of the regex here for you guys and let you decide if that's something that you would want for file naming. Same thing here for binary files. So your images, MP4s, all that stuff. You can go ahead and establish that here as well. I'll go ahead and put the same one in, but this one would not actually be helpful, especially if we were to be importing an MP4, because test again.mp4, that's going to say it doesn't pass because it has a number in here. So if I were to use the same string, I would just need to, in the extension area, include 0 through 9. And then once I do that, it now will allow numbers to be in the extension. So that's something that you can decide if that's something you want as for your site, per site, when it comes to file naming. I'll go ahead and remove those items because that's up to you. Next, upload limits. So we have the capability to establish upload limits for non-admin users. Again, we saw yesterday that as an admin, I was able to override the fact that your limit is 1 megabyte for image sizes. Notice you can choose between kilobyte and megabyte here. And then you could put in whatever number you'd want to. So megabyte here, let's say we wanted it to be 3. And then for videos, I think this is set as, what is that, a gigabyte? And so here you have the capability to decide, whether or not you want these larger, smaller, kilobyte measurements or megabyte measurements. And so here I'm going to go ahead and set this back to what it was for you guys. And since I'm not going to save, it doesn't matter really. So here for your LDP settings, this right here is something that does need to be established for us to go over those advanced content types. I don't know if this is something because either Carl or our support team would be working with your IT team to get this information all set up here. The fact that it's not populated for this site may be why we weren't even seeing that as an option when we were creating assets.
Is this the Omni SSM package that I installed?
Yes.
Yeah, so I did install that, and Julia knew about it, so maybe they just haven't gotten to it yet, or
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
it's not working. I don't know.
And I did ping Carl on that just to say, hey, we need I need to make sure that I'm able to show those advanced assets on Thursday. So being that we're just kind of overlapping with development and training, we might just run into those things where it's like, well, where is it? I hope it's there, by Thursday.
Okay.
And I'll continue to remind Carl. I actually told him again this morning that that was one of the items that I need by Thursday. So
Okay.
and then auxiliary sites for a specific site, not at the account level, you can do that as well as establish other published targets if you have the SDP information for that. So you can have a site have another published target if you had that existing. And so you just need to have all that information. And then here, the Melody settings, this is referring to that layout builder that's under the content menu. And so where do those files, publish to, and what is their extension? They will be .lcf, and I don't know, maybe they'll change to HTML once they're published out, but when they're saved, they'll be LCF documents. And then optional features for a given site: find and replace, dependency manager, binary management, web dev, and then our calendar module. We'll come back to this option on Friday when we start to go over the calendar module. There's just a couple configurable items in here. And so that wraps up going through the account and the sites option for the setup menu. It does look like we have a lot more to go through, but these go a lot quicker, especially since they're fairly similar in how you use them and navigate through them. So right here is where we'll go ahead and pause to take a break, and then we'll come back and wrap up through, and we still won't need to go the full 3 hours from where we're at now. So how does a 10-minute break sound for you guys?
That works for me.
Yeah, same here.
All right, then we'll so for you guys, it's what, 2:34.
Yep.
So let's do 2:44 as well. 2:44, we'll be back. All right, moving back into our setup menu, we're going to jump into the items below sites and accounts, where we're going to go into users. So users, we've seen a little bit so far in terms of gaining access for all of you guys. But let's talk about how to utilize these different items, because these are going to be very similar in how they look. First of all, it's going to tell you where you're at and how many items within those these various menus you have. So we have 10 users currently. Notice here, this table does give me the capability to organize things by ascending or descending in the different categories. I can organize by levels. So as you add more accounts here, you can see, hey, who are my level 10s, who are my level 9, and so on. And also see when they last logged in here. So if someone hasn't logged in yet, your developer has an account, but he actually logs in via our super admin. So it'll never show him logging in as through the Omni CMS login page. So that's usually why you won't see them having any login history. Here you can also see whether or not an account has been locked, whether they've tried their password too many times or another admin has locked them. And a level 10 can lock out another level 10, which is something that's bizarre, but they can also unlock them. But let's say, for instance, someone was going rogue or whatever, and you needed to lock them out, you can go ahead and do that. If for some reason all of your level 10 users get locked, we contact us at support and we can unlock you. We can get you access again to your account. So this is something that you can definitely work through here. So let's say, for instance, I know Misty's not on the call right now. And so if I wanted to lock her out, I'd have the ability to say, hey, are you sure you want to log this person out? We'll go ahead and say yes. They would be locked out until another user or admin unlocks them. So again, this is only level 10 because it's in the setup menu. You can select multiple group members from here. You can lock them all at once too. You can add them to groups that you've already established, or you can create a new group with those users selected right from here. And so that sometimes can be a little bit easier, especially if you get a really long list going on here. You can start to search by name as well. So here, let's say we search for Jordan. All right, so Missy Jordan's popped up here. That's my name as well, but I have ZZ Trainer as my account. So that's where I would need to search for that. And so as I click on myself, I've now been added. Oh, interesting. Okay, I was thinking I could, select myself and then search for other people. So it looks like that's not something that you'll be able to do. So I can always revisit to see if that's something that should be turned on or possible. Especially if you end up having, 500 employees that have user accounts here, that would be handy to be able to search their name, select them, and then search another person. So I'll go ahead and that's just kind of something I'll look into. So here, again, that's where we can go ahead and select multiple, get different options for them, delete users as well. And then also each user is going to have a more actions option where you can edit the user, which is the same as clicking on their name, lock them, or delete them as needed. Okay, cool. Just got a message. So now let's talk about actually going through and adding a user. So I'm going to add a couple users that we'll be using for tomorrow, and I'll demonstrate a little bit of what they are capable of doing today. So let's go ahead and click on the plus new. And so I'm actually going to create ZZ level 6. Okay, I already have a password that I used for them. And so I'm also going to put in an email for them. So level 6 at moderncampus.com. And so the reason why an email is important is not just because I'm going to pull in an avatar for this user using Gravatar, but this is how they'll be communicated to outside of Omni CMS. So if they don't have an email address, they'll only get notifications accessible via their dashboard, which not every user is going to go check those regularly. And so having an email associated to their account is very important. So that's something we would recommend. You don't need to include all this information, but for organizational purposes, maybe that is going to be helpful for you guys. Then here is where we're going to go ahead and establish the level of user they are. So I'm going to make this a level 6, but if you're not exactly sure what level you should make them, let's go to this little resource here about information on user levels. So this takes us to a page on our support site that kind of gives us a nice long and robust chart of the different capabilities of the different levels. So notice you'll see some areas that are left blank, some that have check marks, and some that have diamonds. So the blank means that user level cannot edit page parameters. So that starts at level 5 and up. You cannot add that to them. But if it's a diamond, they don't have it as default, but you can give them the user level, like user specific permission to be able to upload files. So for instance, being able to import zip files is a 9 and 10 capability, but you could give it to 8, 9, or 6, 8, 7, 6. And so you can see how that kind of breaks down here. Now, again, there are a lot of different items here. And so this is not necessarily something that you're going to go through for every single person to know each and every item that they can or cannot do. And so that's where this helpful flow chart that we have for you guys at the bottom of this chart is going to be really come in handy. So as you open it, you're going to navigate to the third slide here. This is little instructions on how to use this. But here, I'll just demonstrate it right now. So let's go ahead and say we wanted to create a user, but we needed to figure out what level they needed to be and what permissions they have. So here, I'm going to say, yes, they want to edit pages. Yes, they need to be able to create stuff. And yeah, I want them to modify page parameters. Are they going to upload files? We'll say yes. Are they going to be able to delete files? I'll say no. Can they add to the custom dictionary? Yeah, that's okay with me. Edit page source, definitely not. Upload zip files, no. Overwrite files, no. All right, and so here's the recommendation. They should be a level 7, and I should add the ability to add to the dictionary. Now, something that I will point out is a level 6 and level 7, there's not much difference between them. I actually haven't yet found something that the level 7 can do that the level 6 can't. And so that is, they're just, giving them a little bit of a higher title, I guess, because they think, hey, maybe that sounds better as they're a level 7. But level 6 and 7 are pretty much the same. And so one of the things that they said for us to give them is the ability to add words to the dictionary. So you're going to see other specific user level permissions that I can enable, like allowing source, allowing import of zip files, allowing the ability to overwrite and delete. So these different items here, I can go ahead and turn on or off. I can set a specific time zone and language for this person. Let's say they were a remote editor for you guys and they were in a different time zone. You can go ahead and change that as well. And here we're going to talk about workflow tomorrow, but this is where you would establish an approver over a specific user and whether or not you enforce that. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, like I said. And then here for this right now, since we're not actually using that, we're just going to talk about the ability to add them to existing groups if you had them already, or you can create a group at the user level. But this will just create a group with this individual person in, and you actually won't be able to change the name of the group after that. So this isn't necessarily the best way to create a group. Steve, were you about to ask a question?
Yeah, can you scroll back up to the LDAP section? So can we use LDAP for each particular user?
Oh, it would appear that way. I guess so. Let me.
So if it's not something you necessarily know about, that's okay. I already have a ticket in to get single sign-on set up, but LDAP is a interesting way to do this. And another question that Jesse and I had, we were talking about this morning, is that in general, you've got these accounts created for us already. If we add single sign-on, what will happen to the accounts that are already created?
Well, so if you have, like, obviously you're going to want the email, so you will still create users and have the email that the single sign-on uses as the credential. It's just the password that you have established here will be basically null.
Okay.
And so your user will still remain intact.
So if the user ID matches our user ID on the single sign-on instance, then it'll be the same.
Yeah, if it's using email to verify that and make that connection, then yeah, they'll be fine.
Okay.
And then so let's say we need to create new users before the single sign-on's all set up. If you're creating a new user for them, you can send a welcome message, including the password in that message and whatever else you would want to send here. Once you do have the single sign-on turned on, then you won't need to, this won't apply for that. So, but you would still make the user and you can send them a welcome message too. So, so with that, I'm not going to actually send a welcome message to this user. I'm going to go ahead and make sure level 6, and they have the ability to add to the dictionary. Let's go ahead and create them. And notice it pulled in their avatar from Gravatar. And I'm going to create one more user, actually 2 more users. So my level 8. And then level 8 at moderncampus.com. Go in here to level 8. And I'm not going to add any additional permissions for them. So I'll go ahead and create that. And lastly, ZZ Trainer 2. And this is something that I'm going to use for tomorrow to demonstrate workflow. And I'm going to make them another level 10. All right, great. So now I've created these additional users onto the site. Of course, once we finish the training, feel free to delete these out, but we'll use them throughout our training process. So now we have different levels. And so here, if I were to organize by different levels, this is nice to show me, who they are. And I didn't put names in for any of mine, which is why there's the not available for those. Moving on down to groups. Groups, again, are going to be very, very handy. Groups come into play, especially with access settings, but also in terms of sending communication or getting notifications from Omni CMS. So it's not limited only to access when it comes to groups. And so the reason why I make that point is because sometimes our customers, when they hear that admins have access everywhere, so they don't need to be put into groups to have access, they still probably want to receive communication about certain things that they're overseeing. And so being in a group that would get those sort of email updates and stuff like that would be important. So don't think just because you're level 10 and you have access everywhere that you may not want to be part of a group. You may still want to put yourself as a member of a group for communication purposes. And so here I'm just going to go ahead and create a group called training group. I'm going to go ahead and add those users that I just created. And so we'll go ahead and say save. I'm going to create one other group called training leadership. And so I'm going to exclude the level 6 from that group and exclude my account. I'm just going to have the ZZ Trainer 2 and level 8 in that group. And so now that I have these groups established, I'm going to go over and I'm going to close out some of these other windows I had open. I'm going to go back here to my training folder, and I'm going to go specifically to that area that I called section. And so here, this section, I'm going to go ahead and limit the access now that I have those groups established. So here in this access setting, I'm going to go ahead and have this apply recursively. So it's going to include all of the files that are there. If I were to just do the folder itself, it's going to limit people from coming into here, but they'd still have access to these files if they searched for it, if they weren't part of my access group. So I want it to apply to everything that's in this folder. And so here, I'm going to go ahead and apply my access group, and I'm going to go ahead and say training group. Perfect. And so now that's all that I'm going to do for right now. I'm going to click save. And so now there is access that is only available to non-admin users that are in this group. So in the training group. But here for this calendar test, let's say I think that this is really important and only the training leadership group should have access to it. I'm going to go ahead and go into the access settings for this page specifically and change that from training group to training leadership. And so the reason why I do this is because I want to show how it will look like for a user that has access to this area but doesn't have access to this file specifically. And so here, let's go, and I'm gonna temporarily log out. Yeah, I think it'll be fine. No, I have to actually close that out. So here, I'm gonna log out, and I'm gonna log in with my level 6 user. So here, my level 6, I'm now logged in. I'm going to go to my content. Notice how they don't have the setup menu because they're not an admin. They actually only have access to a couple items in content because they can create assets, but components and snippets they do not have access to. So I'm going to go to pages here. I'm going to go to training. I'm going to go to section. And so notice I can get into here, but calendar test I cannot get into. Because I don't have access as a user. Also, I don't have the ability to go to access settings as a level 6. So that's something also that I don't have access to as a level 6. Just my user level does not allow for that. And so now I'm going to show you if I log out and log in as a level 8. Same thing, no setup menu for me. but I do have a third item because a level 8 is allowed to recycle items. So I see the recycle bin here. So here, as I go into the training section, I do have access to that calendar test because I'm part of that group. And then here, the level 6 or level 8, sorry, this is where they have access to access settings. And here is how limited it is. So we talked a little bit about the potential of wanting certain people or user levels to have the ability to change access. Here's what a level 8 can do. Here, they can just change this. So here they can go ahead and set this to everyone again. And so the group with rights to edit this folder. And so they've changed it for this folder, but they didn't change it. They don't have the ability to change it recursively. They'd have to go into this individual file, go to access here for this one, and change it individually for that one to give level 6 back the capability to edit that. So they'd have to go in and do it to individual files, whereas a level 9 could do this and it'd be recursive. They'd have the option to do it recursively. And so that's level 8 has very, again, limited access to access settings. But they are the first tier of being able to do that. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign back into my ZZ Trainer account. But I just wanted to show a little bit of the access settings that we can play around with here once we have groups established. So we are back in groups. And so here, that's how we can make groups. One thing I do want to note is I can select multiple groups and I can add users to both at the same time. Or I can, when one's selected, I can copy a group. But one thing I can't do when I'm editing a group is I cannot change the group name. So if for some reason you decide that you want to change the name of a group, what you have to do is select the group, copy it, and then you can change the name of it. And then you just want to probably delete the previous group. So that's something that is important to know. Once a group's established, you can't change the name. So you got to copy it and then rename it and then probably delete the other one if you want to. Again, we're always going to have this everyone group, and administrators only doesn't show up here, but that's referring to levels 9 and 10 as admins within here. Moving on to, we're going to just do a little leapfrog over toolbars because font size sets only applies to custom toolbars. So I'm going to go over this so that we can actually apply it to a toolbar. So font size set, again, currently we don't have any sizes established or size sets established. So I need to click on plus new. I'll go ahead and call this training font size set. I'll go ahead and add a size here. We'll add 12, 14, and we'll just give them a big one, 36. Get rid of that. And I'll go ahead and save this. So now I have a font size set. Again, when I have it selected, I have the option to edit or delete. And then same thing as clicking on here is edit. So moving back up to toolbars, now that I have a font size set, I'm going to show you how to create a custom toolbar. And so here we're going to go ahead and give it a name. Training toolbar, perfect. And notice here it's giving me a preview of what the toolbar currently has on it. And then as I remove these items, so no lists for you for this one. I don't want them to be able to add assets. They can't add tables and no videos, just images here. And so that's all I'm going to do in terms of taking items away for them. And then I'm going to go ahead and establish a font size set for this toolbar as my training font size set. So they're only going to have those 4 options that I created. And then I also have the option for this toolbar of whether or not they have the option to have all the paste options, meaning bring in this, the formatting from the source, or to only paste this plain text. So that I can go ahead and limit that as I need to. And so I'll go ahead and click create. And so now that I have the training toolbar, I'm going to go back over to my pages in a new tab. And for that training section, the section under the training section, I'm going to go into the access settings here. I'm going to establish for all of the items in here a toolbar as being the training toolbar. So here, when I click save, I go into this index page and I start to edit this content. Notice here, I can't add a video. I don't have my ability to add lists. And I took something else away from them, I forgot. But and now I only have these 4 options in my font sizes. So that is something that and I can't add assets. So notice here that custom toolbar is what's been established for this section. So I could change that at the page level too, if I decide, for this one, in the access settings for this, as it's closer to the content, I can override that. So the only thing is I would have to have a different one. Inherit from parent means that it's going to look at the section and say, hey, what's their toolbar? I'm going to use that one. So I need to have a different custom one here, or change this back to inherit from parent as well. So there's some nuances to adding custom toolbars. You technically have the capability to add a custom toolbar to a user, but I've found that the precedence, concept overrides that every time, because each section's inheriting it from the parent, and so the user toolbar I have found gets overridden each time. So, all right, and so that's toolbars. Next, we're going to go into the concept that we had a whole PowerPoint slide on, image sizes. So here we have, when we go to image size sets, we have the place where we establish our sizes, and then where we create our image size sets. So let's go ahead and create some sizes here. So I'm going to create 4 today. So I'm going to go ahead and call this small. And so we need to establish a suffix for this. So this will be appended to the end of the file name. So we'll go ahead and do small. I put a hyphen there so that there's some separation. I'll go put 100 by 100. We'll keep the original aspect ratio here for that, and then click create. We'll do that again. Medium. Go ahead and put in MD. 400 by 400. Also keep that as original. Click create. Large. LG. I'll do 1000 by 1000. Keep the original aspect ratio. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and do another large one, but with the crop. So I'll do LGC for crop. And we're going to do 1000 by 1000, but we'll do cropped instead. And so we'll click create. And so now I have all of these sizes. And so here I'm going to go to image size sets and click on plus new. I'm going to call this training image size set. I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. And then here, this is going to give me the option of when I upload an image to an area that has a size set established in the access settings, it's going to take that image and it's going to create 4 versions of it. And then here I have the option, and it's going to make them these sizes. And then here I have the option of whether or not it's going to include the original image that's being uploaded or not. And so for our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and say no. And we're just going to get 4 different versions of that, one cropped as large, one original, and then these medium and small. So I'll click on create. Now I've made that. Going back into this section, I'm going to go ahead and click on image size set here under access. This I don't have to do recursively because I have no other sections in here. And so I'm going to go ahead and do image size set and click on training, click save. And just so we have a nice place to look where it's not going to have other files showing, I'm going to create a new folder for that. I'm just going to call it images. Notice here, when I click on this and I go to the key symbol, it's inherited it from the parent, which is the training image size set. And now let's upload just a single image. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of the images from yesterday that we saw that was fairly large. Right here, sample students 2, open up. Yep, let's go ahead and do this one. And so it's upload in progress. And what it's doing is it's taking that image and it's applying the image size set that I've established for this section. And so, if you want to, feel free to click out and then click back in. It may still be in progress of what it's doing. And so not that this is actually making it load faster, we're just catching it, in between things. If we were to just sit here and wait, we would see the others populate. We will get a notification down here once it finishes. So we'll give that another second or so. And here you can see why I have the little hyphen in between. And now it has finished uploading and I get that notification. So here, as I click into that, I'm going to see, all right, here's that small version. Now here I had this set as original. So it's not 100 by 100. It's, it shrunk it down so that the longest side was able to fit. So yeah, 100 by 66. We'll see that again with medium. Here we did 400 by 400. And then here's the large one, 1000 by 1000. Again, not quite there. And then here's the cropped one. So this is going to be that 1000 by 1000. And so what it did is it just cut off the longer sides of the whatever was longer, which I believe it was the width. So here we have 1000 by 1000. And that's image size sets kind of in action for you, original versus cropped. And again, we did not include the original image in the image size set settings. And so that's why we just have the 4 resized options that came through. And so again, if you wanted to come in and edit this and say, yes, I actually would want the original to come through, you can click on yes and save. And the next time an image that is uploaded in those sections that have that applied, it will include the original. So you could do that if you wanted to. And you create multiple of these and use them in different areas as needed.
Got a question on that.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the one that you uploaded really quick?
Yeah.
So for the one that's cropped, are you able to recrop that? Like if
Yeah,
you don't
so
like how it automatically cropped it, are you able to kind of recrop it on your own?
So yeah, so in here, so let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the full image. Here I can still apply a crop to what came in. And so I can custom crop this if, I still wanted it to maybe not include this other student or something like that. And I just wanted it to be there. I can go ahead and save it or save as, and it would do a new copy of it. I'll just go ahead and save it right now. And I didn't apply the crop. So here we do need to make sure that when we're doing another crop, bring this in, apply crop, and then now I can hit save.
So that will allow you to recrop the cropped version, but you can't say, okay, I've got the cropped version. I don't like how it necessarily cropped it automatically. I want to go back to the original and then recrop it to the crop that I want, but based on the dimensions that I've selected for this crop. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then what you would do is, so basically this crop came through because we told it to, but this one came in as the original aspect ratio. So here, if you'd actually like it to crop more this way and include these 3 students, then you could do that. So
you crop from here, okay.
Yeah, and so now I can crop this, but I'm doing that because I brought in the original aspect ratio. It's just a smaller size image.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I didn't save. I'll just save that just for giggles. All right, and so here, going back into our setup menu, moving on through to gadgets. So you as an administrator have the capability to add gadgets and enforce certain gadgets to be on, make them only available for admin users as well. So for instance, we were using page parameters yesterday. So let's say you look at this and you're like, oh, this is such a great handy tool. I want this always on for everyone. And then also if it happens to have any properties available, you'd see them here. And so this is for specifically the gadget, will it hide the meta tags? And so for when it comes to page parameters. So when I'm looking at it in the gadget form on the sidebar, I can say, yes, hide the meta tags. And so it won't show me like the web browser title section and the description and keywords. It's just going to show me the custom settings. And so that's how you can establish that a little bit more. Now, I know you might not be as familiar with this gadget, so let me at least show it in context again. So here, when we're on a specific page, we have the page parameters open. And notice here it's showing the metadata, so the title that shows up when I'm on my browser tab, the description, keywords, and tags. And then custom settings is where I can go ahead and change the page heading. I can turn on whether or not it has the side navigation, change the hero image. And so if I were to go into this and say, yes, hide the meta tags and save that, now when I come back over here and I expand this, I might have to just even reload the page. Let me go back, come back in. Let me refresh. Yeah, see, notice now it's missing those that metadata field. So that's because we made that change as an admin in our setup menu specifically for this. Always on also means that when I go to change my gadgets or edit this, I won't be able to uncheck that from being on my sidebar. So you have control as to what tools they have at the ready. And so that's something that you can do from here, make those changes. I'll leave this as no, and I'll change that to default off for you guys because that's how it was. And then they'll still be able to, it's still available to them. But you can also change whether or not it's only available to administrators or only specific people in a group. And again, these gadgets, the settings that you're doing here are account wide. So any site is what you're making the changes for. And again, you'll see right here whether or not it's dashboard and sidebar, just dashboard. And here we can search for a specific gadget. Like let's say we wanted to look for YouTube. Here we can see this is just sidebar one. And if we were to select here, it's just going to take us to the edit, which is the same thing. And so I don't think there's a delete option. Yeah, so here when we have it selected, that's the same access settings that we see when we go to edit. Here's the access here. And so all YouTube videos access. So right now this is set that when someone's using the YouTube property, only if they're an administrator can they search all of YouTube. And so what that would mean is you'd probably want to add a YouTube channel that they could search, or else this wouldn't really be helpful for your users in terms of the YouTube gadget at least. And I'll show an example of the YouTube gadget when we're talking about adding a YouTube account here. And so that's a little bit with gadgets. Again, I just used the search option. Adding here is going to give you the ability to put in the URL if you know where the gadget is, you can fetch it. But I've found that it's much easier to just do it from the marketplace. Moving on down to tags. Here's where we can manage the tags that are existing on your site already. So this does not do what we did in the site tag access settings in terms of limiting what tags are used. This right here is just for organizing and creating new tags. So here I'm going to go ahead and select cheese. I can disable this or I can completely delete it. So that is definitely something that you don't need as a tag. So I'll go ahead and delete the cheese tag. But here, if I wanted to create a new tag, it's as simple as clicking on the plus new. I'm going to tag and then putting in, I'm just going to put in training. And so we'll save that here. If you wanted to, again, when someone is working within a page and they're, on the properties here, they could add a tag. And so I'll just put in sample. And so now that is going to be a tag that lives in the system. So if I were to refresh the tag page, now I have sample as a tag. And so anyone has the capability to create a new tag throughout the system. I'd have to double check actually to see if, because I'm a level 10, let me do that really quick. We have plenty of time right now with where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead and log out here, if it'll let me. Log in as a level 6. Pages, training. Let's go to informational properties. Check it out. Parameters. And I'm going to see if it'll let me add a tag. Test. Okay, yeah. So at least a level 6 also has the capability to add tags. I can see if that's a lower level capability as well, which may be a reason why you want to use that fixed tags, not fixed tags, filtered tags option, so that it limits the potential of a ton of different tags being created. So we'll go ahead and click save, and I'll log out and log back in as my ZZ Trainer to go see that that's there.
And tags are system-wide?
Tags are system-wide.
Okay.
So they are used across your entire account. And so here we can go ahead and eliminate some of these as well. Now, so they are like the tags that show up here, this is account-wide. But like I was showing you in sites, each site has the capability for you to go in and limit tag access.
Yep.
And so you could go ahead and filter, so you could make your list of the only allowed tags for this site. And then they would only be able to choose from however many tags you put in here. Notice here, though, it's pulling from what's already in existence. But you can create a brand new one here too again. So let's say we want to bring back cheese, and then cheese would be, if I just left this for this site, it would be the only tag that could be used. So for instance, I'm gonna save this. I'll remove this because we don't necessarily want that. I'm assuming natural science would apply to cheese, maybe, but so here, if I go in as an admin, I'll check this back in. I'll check it out, go to properties and go to tags. So it did allow me to, oh, because I'm an admin, so I can do whatever I want. So that's, if I were in level 6, they would not be able to add anything other than cheese. If I were a level 8, I would not be able to add anything other than cheese. And
what about, so you have an uppercase training. What happens if you type a lowercase training? Okay.
Let me just, yeah. So it's, I don't think I have to hit return. And so it's going to select the uppercase one. I'm going to see, let me go and remove the cheese from the tag access. Save. But let me go into tags and try and add another lowercase training. It should give me an error saying it already exists. Yeah. So it's not case sensitive. So it just knows that it's the same. Now, let's say though that we did have, and this has been something that pops up quite a bit, is some schools will use an admissions tag. And then someone who's, typing in admission, they just forget an extra S. And so people start using this tag because it comes up first. And now you've got a bunch of tags that are in between here. And so how do you resolve that issue? And so here we would go and we'd select both of these, and we have the option to merge a tag. And so what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, which tag do you want to take over? And so we're not going to do the misspelled admissions. We're going to do the correctly spelled admissions. And so now with that selected, we click on merge, and it will just then disable this. Anything that used this one has now been replaced with this. And then you can make the decision to delete the incorrectly spelled one if you want to. And so that's how you would go about resolving an issue like that might pop up. And so I will go ahead and I'm going to delete most of these and let you guys decide. We are going to use training when we get into blogs and everything. And I might make even some more tags later, but just wanted to point that out. Moving down to custom dictionary. So again, you do have account-wide dictionary and site dictionary. I'd recommend, if you have a list of words for your school that are correct for your school, but maybe considered misspelled, having a list either separated by commas or on separate lines, you can quickly add them into here. So you simply click here and add. And so separate words by line or comma. So you just paste that in and then click save, and it would make a entry for all of them. Usually we'll have schools put in like social media spellings. And so whether it's YouTube or YouTube, and it is case sensitive. That's why I put both of these in here. Because if I just have a capital YouTube and someone just types in YouTube as a lowercase, it would flag both of those. It would flag just one of them if only the capitalized one was in the custom dictionary. And so if I were to add all four of those, notice because they were separated by lines, I see all of those populate. This is now in the account dictionary, which means all of my sites will have this word and it won't flag them. And so you could do it at the site level as well. And so here it's choosing the site that I have selected here. If I were to change the site, that site dictionary would pop up. I'm going to go ahead and remove these and let you guys determine whether or not those would be something that you use. And then here in the site dictionary, we will have some because I added those yesterday during our train the trainer session. And so here I'm just going to select all of these and delete them. And so here you have the capability to add as well. So whichever level you decide that you want to add custom words in, maybe for integrative technology, there's a bunch of acronyms that you guys use for that department that you would want to not have flag all the time and spelling errors. You can go ahead and add those as well. So that's something you could do at the site level or the account level. So back in here, next is Google Analytics. So Google Analytics, this is going to be very similar to our social media and YouTube accounts. Whereas if you have a Google Analytics account, when you click on this plus add, what's going to happen is it's just going to bring up a window where it's asking, and here I'll just share this really quick. Where it's just asking for you to log in with those credentials. And so the same thing will be true if you do that for Facebook and Twitter. And so I just wanted to point that out. That's what happens when you click on the plus add. If you have multiple Google Analytics accounts, you can go ahead and do that. And then you would assign, it is account wide. And so then you can assign it to different sites if needed. Moving on, oh yes, question?
Sorry, yeah, so we will be using Google Analytics for sure.
Mhm.
So when you say you do an ad, it takes us to a sign in. I guess what happens once you sign in at that point? Because
So
we'll
what
have separate property IDs for each one of our, roughly 100 sites.
Right, exactly. And so depending on, I'm not 100% familiar with the Google Analytics setup, but I'm assuming there's a level, like a certain capacity that your account can have, like a number of sites that it can track, and probably something you can upgrade. And so, yeah, you would need to basically, once it's in here, you would have settings that you can set up within Omni CMS of like, hey, which sites is it actually grabbing information for?
Okay.
And yeah, since it's all kind of theoretical right now, I can double check to see. Again, we do still have plenty of time, so let me go ahead and do this.
Because I knew on our end for the requirements gathering for development, I said we needed to be able to include Google Analytics. I didn't know there was, something built right in to be able to do that. I just wasn't sure how we were going to go about doing that.
Mm-hmm. And so in Google Analytics view list, click the name and then select enable checkbox to add the view to Google Analytics gadget. The base filtering for Omni CMS is specific to the HTTP root in the site settings. So if another site in your account is set up as a subfolder, the analytics data for the subsite are included in the main site view. To exclude the subsite. Okay, so I'll send this article, and I'll also, so part of the article is a training Tuesday on Google Analytics. So this is from 5 years ago, but while it's going to have a different look on the platform because we went by a different name before we changed to Omni CMS. This is actually a video of someone walking through the setup and configuring Google Analytics as well. So
Okay.
nice resources. Okay, cool. So moving to templates here. Obviously, right now this is not as fully built out because Carl is still getting everything up and running in terms of how your templates are going to look, including the blogs templates and stuff. But here, this is where we can go to see our templates. We can change the names here, change access to the templates specifically, as well as add in custom thumbnails here. And I'm hoping that once Carl has everything kind of built out, he'll import those for you guys and it'll look really nice and clean for you. Here also, when you create layouts using Melody, not necessarily that is something that you plan on doing, but if you were, this is where you would see them and manage access for those as well, their names and their thumbnails. And then here, this is where you can create template groups. So let's say, for instance, of course, working with the limited options that we have, let's create a training template group. So training template group, nice, it's ready for me. Here, I only want in this training template group for someone to be able to make a new informational page. I don't want them to be able to make a new section, but I will allow them to create a new folder where they can, house any resources like PDFs or something like that. So here I've said show new folder. And then here I also have the option to just show what I've selected so far. And so, yep, that looks how I want it to for this template group. So I'll click on create. And so now with that, I'm going to go into my access settings for this section. And I'll go ahead and I don't have to worry about doing this recursively because this is going to be for anything new that's added. So I'm going to go ahead and click on, where's templates? Oh yeah, right here. So template group, training template group, I'll click on save. And now this applies also to me as an admin. So I click on plus new, I'm only seeing these templates because even though I'm an admin, this template group setting or access setting applies to the section regardless of the user level. And so, of course, I could create, a new section somewhere else and move it into this. But in terms of using the plus new button, this is what I'm limited to. And so that's a little bit, of course, without having a robust collection of templates to choose from right now, a little bit of how we can go about making template groups. And then back to settings. Just like I said with Google Analytics, Facebook and Twitter are very similar. You click on the plus add, and it's going to ask you to sign in to Facebook. I know you can't see this, but it brought me over to Facebook, just like it did for Google. Same thing with Twitter, and same thing with YouTube. Now, when it comes to YouTube, if I were to add multiple channels, one, I would be able to say what sites it's available to, what groups it's available to, and what that's useful for is when we're using the YouTube gadget. So again, when I'm here in, I'll just go back to my regular index page here for training. If I go to my gadgets, I have the option to turn on the YouTube gadget. And so here, if I'm in the editor, and I look down here at my YouTube gadget, right now I'd be able to choose between the channels that I have set up. Currently, we don't have any channels, so it's just going to be all YouTube videos. And so there's a little search icon here, and I'll just search Modern Campus. And what it's going to do is searching all of YouTube for Modern Campus. And so I'm going to scroll down until I find, okay, hey, this is one of our videos. This is one of our videos. Okay, so I'll just click and drag that into here. It'll ask me for the size, and I'll go ahead and click on yes or save. And so that's one way to navigate instead of having to go and find the link that you're looking for. If you have your YouTube channels added here, you can also search specifically the channels that you've set up in your setup menu using the YouTube gadget. And so that's where that actually really comes into play, is using those gadgets. And as far as our admin day 1 content, that really has been the entire setup menu. And so I will pause for questions in just a moment. Just want to kind of give you another preview of what we're going to be going over tomorrow. Our first chunk of tomorrow, we're going to talk about workflow and how to assign approvers and bypass approvals, and setting an approver for a section as opposed to a user. And seeing that, I'll be logging in and out of different users quite a few times so we can kind of see how that plays in. And then we'll move into our content menu, and we'll go over components and snippets a little bit. We'll touch on Melody briefly and talk about find and replace in the recycle bin. And then we'll take our break and then finish out by going through the entire reports menu. And so tomorrow's training is just 2 hours. We may need to use the full 2 hours or maybe 5 minutes less or so. But it is a lot to go over in each of those items to make sure we fully understand it with that. So with that said, I open it up to you guys. Any questions that we have on admin day 1 stuff, or things that you would like us to go over tomorrow, or anything like that?
I will say, in just kind of updating regarding the little test I did with the WYSIWYG editor, I did uncheck that when we were having our break. I did uncheck that checkbox for the HTML5 schema, and tried to do it again, and it was still removing those custom elements. So I turned it back on just so that it was back to level 5. I just wanted to let you know that I did test that out. Both when it was turned on and turned off. So neither made a difference, but I just want to let you know.
Okay, and you turn it on, you turn it off and saved, and then tried it, and then turn it back on and saved, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. And I did see that you also added a description of the issue on the page.
Just directly on the page itself. Yep.
Cool.
I guess in terms of questions from me, I don't think I've got any additional questions. I think you answered the ones about users. So when we finally get a single sign-on up and running, don't really have to worry about the users that we've got currently. Those, any permissions or whatever that are currently set up, those will transition over. So that should be fine. It looks like the only thing we might have to do, at least with my account, we just have to update it to the username has to match what our username is for the single sign-on, correct?
Yes. So, okay. I mean, what you see here that's not necessary. It just depends on what your single sign-on platform is using to recognize. So if it's
Okay.
using your email to recognize your user, then this will be fine, and that'll be, you know, fine.
Okay. Do you know if that happens to be the case, Steve?
I don't know for sure because
Okay.
my gut reaction would have been username, but it could be either one.
Okay, because I know when we do single sign-on, right, we don't have to put in the @msu.edu for it. So yeah, I guess I don't know if that translates over to the username or if it
No,
automatically fills
it
that
has
in
to
when you
do
submit.
with what the Okta application actually sends back to the
What it sends back. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, and you're already, you've got a ticket in there for them, for our support team to work with you guys on that, right?
Yep, and somebody already grabbed it today. I saw they haven't commented, but they grabbed it.
Okay, awesome.
The only question I have is how can you stand it with that update on your Chrome browser? It's driving me nuts.
I know it's you know, it is, our computers are like very, very managed by our IT
Yeah.
department. So in order to do any update on any application, I have to have my IT person take over my computer
Okay.
and update a browser, you know. And so I'm kind of waiting for like 2 more applications to need it before I make that.
Well, I was just kidding anyway, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Cool. If there aren't any other questions, I will make sure that I follow up with Carl and Julia on the SSM piece for the LDP items, because that we should have that host information. So once, and we have a whole other day, you know, before Thursday to get that all up and running, but I don't want to want to try not to push anything, just because, you know, it ends up, you know, getting caught up in other scheduled trainings and stuff. So I want to make sure that we are utilizing our time to the best that we can. So
yeah, Jesse, do you remember? I seem to remember Julia telling us that they tested the Omni SSM installs that I did, but
That was my recollection as well. Yes.
yeah, it seems like she did say that they tested it and they thought it was working, but that doesn't mean that they finished the configuration of it on their side.
right. And so that is on us. And so I'll make sure that I talk to Julia and Carl just to make sure there's nothing else that we need from you guys. It sounds like if you've installed it on your end, then you've done your piece. So
yeah. Okay, cool.
Cool. Well, thanks guys. It will be an early day tomorrow. I misspoke yesterday when I didn't look at my calendar. So tomorrow, 9 a.m. for you guys. And so we'll see you then.
All right. Set your alarm. We'll see you tomorrow.
I got it set. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.